What's going on? I'm Scott from Koenig, and today we're going to be answering some of the most frequently asked questions that we get ever. Stay tuned. When it comes down to questions that we get them every day. You send them in, you put them in an email, sometimes you put them in through Instagram, Facebook, etc. We try to answer them there, but sometimes we just feel maybe we should hit it at the head and try to put it out there before you ask them. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be talking about some questions that you often ask and we often answer. So let's get right into it. Question number 1. If I was to change my wheel and tire setup on my car, will that somehow throw the vehicle off with vehicle stability systems, ABS systems, possibly traction control systems, and even things like speedometer gearing for some of the older vehicles? So let's dive into this just a little bit further. On its face value, you can change the wheel and tire package without having any issues at all. It really doesn't have as much to do with the wheel as it does to do with the tire. See, when you change your wheel and tire setup, one of the most important aspects that you need to focus on is making sure that your wheel and tire selection you choose maintains the correct overall rolling diameter. And what does that mean? Well, essentially what that is basically the height of the tire from top to bottom. That diameter right there, that overall rolling diameter, is essentially something that you should match or come as close to as humanly possible. And that's why manufacturers of tires make so many different sizes. It's not just for rim width. A lot of times, it's also to make sure that all the different vehicles out there that run different rolling diameters have options to make sure that they can choose the correct diameter wheel that they're going with, but also match the overall rolling diameter that their vehicle needs. Are wheels a wear item? Now, this question comes to us in a lot of different forms, right? So not everybody writes, are wheels a wear item? But they all mean the same thing. A lot of times we get questions of, how long should my wheel last? Should there be this life expectancy on a wheel? Should wheels last forever? So let's get to the bottom of that question right now. The answer to this is yes, wheels are a wear item. How long do they last? What's their life expectancy? Well, these questions get a little tougher to answer. Let's see if we can get into it with a little bit more detail. So when it comes down to wheels, it's very different than the life expectancy on a brake pad or a clutch, right? Those have mileage intervals or sometime use hours that you can use, depending on their application, to determine how long something should last and to decide whether you had an appropriate amount of use out of that part. Wheels are not really like that. What I mean by that is wheels tend to be judged by the use that they're given. So if you put them through a really harsh life, if you live in a really harsh winter environment, if you have really harsh roads, if you use the car a lot, these are all things that will affect how long a wheel could potentially last. And this is something that we often stress to people that are using the wheels in motorsport. Make sure you're routinely inspecting these wheels to make sure that there's no damage from you hitting road hazards or debris. Make sure that everything looks good, because at the end of the day, it's one of the main components that keep you rolling, on the street. So rounding into the second question here we get a lot is, do lug nuts come with the wheels? Are they in the box? And if not, which lug nuts should I use? So lug nuts are not included with our wheels. And the reason for that is 99% of the aftermarket wheels that you're gonna purchase will not come with lugs from the wheel manufacturer. But we rely on the retailer to be able to get you the right mounting hardware. That's because, frankly, we don't know what vehicle the wheels are gonna go on when we make them. So it's impossible to pre-package lug nuts into a box when we don't really know what size you're gonna need for your vehicle. So the best thing you should do is to consult with a local wheel and tire professional if you got your wheels and they didn't have lug nuts, or to make sure that you order that installation kit that will come from your retailer when you order the wheels at that time. So getting to the second part of this question, many times we're asked, what lug nut should I use? And the answer is pretty simple. From us, you'll tend to hear use a tuner diameter spline drive conical seat lug nut. Now, the size that you're going to use for the thread pitch, that's determined by your vehicle, and there wouldn't be a blanket way we could answer that in this video. So let's talk about the conical seat. Conical seat essentially means it's a 60-degree taper seat. You'll know it kind of looks like a cone. hence the conical part. Now, as far as the spline drive tuner diameter, you don't necessarily need them. The reason we recommend them is because one, it adds a slight layer of protection for safety because it's not just a standard, nut or bolt kind of hex shape. But the other reason is that it gives you a much smaller diameter, and they usually give you a key. And with that key, you'll be able to put the lug nuts on the vehicle and take them off a lot easier because you won't have to worry about scratching the lug holes. So another question that we get a lot. You guys ask this a lot. Does it really matter if I choose a lighter weight wheel in the grand spectrum of things? Does it affect things like gas mileage? And the answer to this is yes. Anytime you reduce rotating mass, anytime you reduce the weight that you're going to be using to use energy from the vehicle to move forward, you're going to have a response that's going to be kind of equal in the reduction in fuel usage. However, don't get too obsessed about the actual weight. Like, in other words, if you're really looking at a wheel for ounces, you're not going to notice a fuel difference. If you're talking about pounds, multiple pounds, then yes, you'll start to see a difference. Now, how much? Some of it's going to be negligible, and you have to remember the most important thing when you're getting really focused on wheel weight is, have you done everything else? And what I mean by that is when you talk about rotors, right? There's two-piece rotors that will save pounds on a car. When you talk about things like, well, I have a spacer, well, you're adding weight now back to the vehicle. When you talk about lug nuts, they're all going to have, again, different weight. What about the tire? Do you weigh the tire? Have you looked at tire weights? Tires, I can tell you for a fact, even in the same size, sometimes can weigh 8 pounds more. And when you get into some of those things, that will make a major difference. So while you're looking at ounces on a wheel, you may be missing out on pounds on a tire. All right, so let's roll into this last question. It's clearly a question that we get a lot. It's also a question that I think is actually really important, and it's a smart question to ask, and it's kind of in the preservation of wheels. People often ask, how do I prevent damage on my wheels? And so it's actually a much easier answer than you would think. First off, there's the common sense part. If you see things in the road, potholes, road debris, major changes in height of surface profiles, you're going to want to scan around and make sure you take gingerly, especially if you have upgraded the wheel size, because the next part of what I'm going to tell you, which is the obvious part that I think has to do with tire size. Remember, when you choose a wheel diameter, the larger you go, it's compensated, again, because that overall rolling diameter, you got to maintain that. The tire gets smaller, right? So wheel gets bigger, tire gets smaller to maintain that same overall rolling diameter. Make sure you're using the proper size tire. I would also say one other thing is make sure, especially in the winter months, that you are maintaining the proper air pressure in your tire. I can't stress this enough. Air pressure is the cushion that's inside the tire that allows that wheel to really hold up. It's the cushion that the tire is riding on. It's also the cushion that your car is riding on. So go ahead, check those tires, make sure you're up to the tire pressure that's approved for the vehicle, and that's really one of the best ways to protect your wheel. So that's it. Thanks for hanging along with us. We appreciate you asking these questions. We obviously like to give you an answer, so we hope that this helps you. Any more questions, comments, anything like that, throw them down below. We'll be happy to answer them. And until then, we will catch you on the next one. Take care.